If you've been scrolling through endless soundbar options and feel that knot in your stomach every time you think about spending a chunk of your budget on something that might end up sounding flat, you're not alone. The fear of buying a big-ticket audio upgrade only to be left with muted dialogue, weak bass, or a setup that still needs extra speakers is real. I've spent the last few weeks watching movies, gaming, and even listening to a couple of podcasts with the Sony BRAVIA Theater Bar 8 and the 65-inch OLED XR8B together, just to see whether the hype actually translates into a nightin that feels like a theater. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why most soundbars fall short. A single channel bar can push a decent amount of volume, but when you're watching a dialogue-heavy drama or a fast-paced action sequence, the voices often get buried under the music and effects. Bass can feel more like a thud than a rumble, and without true surround, the sense of space is missing. That's the baseline you're trying to improve on, and the Sony bundle promises to address each of those pain points with an 11-speaker array, a dedicated sub, and an OLED TV that claims pure black contrast. The question is, does it deliver in a typical living room environment? Who should consider this bundle? If you have a dedicated media room or a living space that's at least around 12 by 15 feet, and you already enjoy streaming services, gaming consoles, or sports nights, you're the kind of buyer who will notice the step up. The OLED's deep blacks make dark scenes pop, and the soundbar's upward-firing drivers create the overhead ambience that turns a simple Netflix binge into something that feels like you're sitting in a cinema. It's also a solid match for anyone who wants a single remote solution. Sony's remote can control the TV, the soundbar, and even Google Assistant, so you're not juggling multiple devices while you're trying to enjoy a movie. On the flip side, if your apartment is a studio, or you're looking for a budget-friendly upgrade, this bundle might be overkill. The subwoofer's low-frequency output is powerful enough that in a small room it can become a bit overwhelming, and the calibration process, while straightforward, does ask you to place a mic and run a short test. If you're happy with your TV's built-in speakers or you only need a modest boost for casual TV watching, the money could be better spent on a higher-quality TV alone. Now, let's dig into the practical strengths I observed. The first thing that struck me was the clarity of dialogue. The soundbar includes a dedicated center channel that isolates speech from the rest of the mix. During a recent episode of a dialogue-heavy drama, the characters' lines stayed crisp even when the background score swelled. That's a noticeable upgrade over a standard bar where you often have to keep the volume turned up just to hear the words, which can be fatiguing. Bass performance is another area where the bundle shines. The wireless subwoofer delivers a low-end punch that you can feel, not just hear. Watching a car chase scene, the engine roars and the road vibrations seem to come from the floor. The sub's behavior is generally well controlled. It doesn't muddy the mids as some cheaper subs do, which means the music stays clear even when the bass is active. However, in a smaller room the sub can dominate, so you might need to dial back the level or use the room calibration feature to keep it balanced. Surround effect is where the 11-speaker design really shows its teeth. The side and rear speakers are not separate boxes but are built into the bar, while the upward-firing tweeters bounce sound off the ceiling to simulate height. In a recent gaming session with a title that uses spatial audio cues, I could pinpoint enemy footsteps behind me and overhead explosions felt three-dimensional. This creates an immersive feel that a two-channel bar can't match. That said, the effect does depend on having a reasonably high ceiling. If your ceiling is low, the height channel can feel less distinct. Connectivity is smooth and modern. The bar supports HDMI eARC, which means you can run a single cable from your console or streaming device to the TV and get lossless audio to the bar. I paired it with the OLED's built-in Google TV, and the integration was seamless. You can switch inputs with voice commands, and the TV automatically sends the right audio format to the bar. The remote friction is low because the same remote that controls the TV also manages volume and sound modes, so there's no need to juggle a second controller during a movie. Practical weaknesses show up mostly around setup flexibility and price. Because the side and rear speakers are part of the bar, you can't reposition them independently if you have a very irregular seating layout. In a room where the couch is angled or you have multiple seating zones, the sound can feel focused on the center spot. Also, the